Hey guys, how's it going? Paul Harris here. Welcome back to another one of my videos. Today I found a good YouTube video, and the YouTube video is one by Jordan Peterson, where he talks about what IQ suits the sort of job you should have. Because I've always wondered, would it be better to be very intelligent and work in a career where, you know, it's sort of beneath you? Are you going to get more satisfaction? Are you going to be able to advance quicker if you're like at the top of a ladder in maybe a profession that's less demanding? Or is it better to be in a sort of midway point of a very competitive industry where it's quite tough? It's always been something that's crossed my mind. And then I came across this YouTube video, which I'm going to watch and you're going to watch with me, and I'm going to comment on it. And then I'll give you my thoughts at the end. So I thought it was quite interesting, and I'm going to do a sort of reactionary video to it. Let's see how it goes. Let's get into it. Okay, so here it is. It's called Jordan Peterson, What Kind of Job Fits Your IQ? 1.7 million views. I apologize if you've already seen this video, but I'm going to give you my opinion on it.
You got to know that there are differences in intelligence. It's really important. If you go into a job and you're not smart enough for that job, you're going to have one bloody miserable time. And you're going to make life wretched for the people around you because you won't be able to handle the position. And as you climb hierarchies of competence, the demand on fluid intelligence increases.
I mean, it's just great. I mean, I've thought this so many times. I just watched the first 20 seconds. I was like, this is going to be a good video. But I don't think this is what people tell you. I think people would tell you to sort of reach for the stars. And this is why this is so interesting, and I haven't even started the video yet. But if you didn't watch this video, all the advice would be reach above where you think you should hit, you know, because then you're going to be the most successful you can be. And people measure success by, you know, are you in the most demanding industry? You know, people want to be doctors, lawyers. But like, you might not actually be as happy if you're in these positions. They might be too demanding for you. They might be too hard. They might be too, like, mentally difficult, you know? So interesting. Right, let's keep going.
And so, unless you want to fail, you don't put yourself in over your head. Well, what's over your head? Well, that's a tricky thing to figure out. I mean, you have to figure that out with intelligence, you have to figure it out with conscientiousness, you have to figure it out with creativity, you have to figure out with stress tolerance, with agreeableness, because you want to go into a cooperative environment and not a competitive one if you're agreeable, and with neuroticism, you probably want to keep the stress level of your job relatively low, because those are all places that you can break down. And most people have at least one significant weakness in their intelligence personality makeup, and you got to be careful not to place yourself in a position where that's going to be a fatal flaw. But what you really want to do,
I mean, that's so interesting as well. I mean, he goes into more detail in a second about what each of these mean. But the angle he's taken here is to sort of work out the sort of person you are and build a job around that, instead of trying to trick yourself into thinking that you're something you're not, and thinking that because everyone else is doing that's what's going to lead to you being happy. Just because someone else wants to find a job which, you know, has these might be very competitive, that doesn't mean that you may not find it as rewarding to be in that sort of environment.
As far as I can tell, if you want to maximize your chances for both success and let's say well-being, is you want to find a strata of occupation in which you would have an intelligence that would put you in the upper quartile. That's perfect. Then you're a big fish in a small pond. And you don't want to be the stupidest guy in the room. It's a bloody rough place to be. So, and you probably don't want to be the smartest guy in the room either, because what that probably means is you should be in a different room, right? You should look at a place where, if you're right at the top, you've mastered it. It's time to go somewhere where you're a little lower so that you've got something to climb up for. So, and if you're not hyper conscientious, for example.
But even that bit, like, and I think the thing you always have to be aware of with this video is what exactly is the outcome of what you're trying to achieve with your job. Is it to just make as much money as possible, or is it to broadly have success and well-being in different areas? You know, you might find reward in a career as being one where you are a leader, or that you're challenged, or that you in a creative environment, or something that suits your personality, up and above just thinking what job is going to get me the most money and how do I put myself under the most amount of stress to be able to achieve that. But the problem it always comes back to is like, you may find yourself more suited for a specific job, but actually what your goal is to earn a lot of money. And then all of a sudden I feel like this bit might fall down a bit, but it's very interesting.
A little lower so that you've got something to climb up for. So, and if you're not hyper conscientious, for example, you're probably not going to want a job that you have to work 70 hours a week at, because you're just not wired up that way. You'd rather have some leisure, and like, more power to you. If that's how you're wired up, there's nothing wrong with having some leisure. But if you're someone who can't stand sitting around doing nothing ever, then maybe you can go into a job that's going to require you to work 75 hours a week. And almost all jobs...
That is extremely interesting, because it was almost like honestly, watching this video, you almost discover something about yourself here, because everyone around me seems to work long hours and seems to be completely comfortable with doing it. I mean, if you're in a sort of like accountancy, financy profession, the idea of working long hours is just a given. Like, it's almost like accepted. But I've never wanted to do that. But again, it goes back to the fact that, like, I swear people who work very long hours and consistently work it are people who are probably going to get a larger financial reward. But it might not be something... you have to actually work out. You can't have it all sometimes. And strangely, I think I'm discovering I'm more and more someone who would rather have a bit of balance and a bit of a social life and to see my family than I would spend 70 hours a week working at a company that doesn't care about you. Because I think I've worked out ages ago, like, as morbid as it sounds, if you die, your friends and family are going to be the ones who are upset. Your company is going to think, that's bad. When can we replace that person? Because we need that resource. And you might have very close people at work and you might have worked with them for a very long time, so they become friends. But on the basis of the company itself doesn't care for you. So why would you put so much effort working in that company? Because you want a financial reward, recognition, etc., obviously. But
jobs that are at the top of complex dominance hierarchies require very high intelligence and insane levels of conscientiousness, as well, generally speaking, as pretty damn high levels of stress tolerance, because that can knock you out too, because there's going to be sharp fluctuations in your career, generally speaking, at the higher levels of a structure, and you have to make very complicated decisions, often with very short time horizons. So you have to decide if that's what you want. Okay, so how smart do you have to be different things in life? Well, if you have an IQ of 116 to 130, which is 85th percentile and above, so it's 1 person in 8 up to 1 person in 130, I believe. I think it's 95. 1 person in 8 to 1 person in 20. Then you can be an attorney, a research analyst, an editor, an advertising manager, a chemist, an engineer, an executive manager, etc. That's now, that's not the high end for IQ, by the way. That it can go up. Well, it can go up indefinitely, although there's fewer and fewer people as it...
Now, I made a video, probably one of my most popular videos have been the ones where I talk about my experience at PwC and being an auditor. Now, the thing is, when you go for a job, you think it's a palaver, the fact they just put you through all these like assessments to like tell what your personality is and to tell, how good you are at logical thinking and, English, maths ability and all these kind of things. And you think it's like a test so they can, it is a test so they can whittle you down and make sure that if you're suited. But it's weird to try and think of it as like, if you don't actually succeed or find it very natural to do those sort of tests, then maybe that is not the role that you should be going down. Maybe it's because of this whole IQ is maybe you're just not, you would find it better to be in a different role. And I think people did, I think I struggled through the 4 years thinking I don't like this. Some people worked like 3 to 6 months and they were out. They just knew they didn't like it straight away. You might have benefited off the back of that instead of have 4 long years of knowing that you don't like it but thinking you have to just struggle through.
That it can go up Well, it can go up indefinitely, although there's fewer and fewer people as it goes up. So if you want to be the best at what you're doing, bar none, then having an IQ of above 145 is a necessity, and maybe you're pushing 160 in some situations, and maybe that's making you one person in 10,000 or even one person in 100,000. And then also, to really be good at it, you probably have to be reasonably stress tolerant and also somewhat conscientious. Well, you think, well,
one thing that is quite evident, having worked in several companies, is you actually, I think I'm probably either in that quartile or maybe a little bit lower. I don't think I've ever done a proper IQ test. After watching this video, I actually typed into Google IQ tests. I spent 10 minutes doing this logical reasoning test. Thought, I'm doing quite well here. For it to tell me right at the end that I needed to pay £15 to find out what my IQ was, to which I went, no. So still don't know what my IQ is. But one thing that's quite interesting is when you're at work, I think I have a pretty good I can work out quite well what other people's IQs are, because I've worked with a lot of people where I think, oh, you just don't get it, man. You just don't. You're a few conversations behind where we're at. But then I have worked with people where I think, I'm a few conversations behind where you're at. Like their work, they just seem to know. I always think like, oh, maybe they just work harder, but they probably work harder and they got a good IQ, which is always very interesting. Like, you know, you can work harder and you can work smarter. And I think I'm quite a smart worker, but then I just don't want to work 70 hours a week. But some people are just smarter. Like they just... So actually, when I meet people who are like that, I'm like, why are you here? I'm like, well, you should be doing something different to what I'm doing.
Why is it that smart people...
Sorry, I don't really do these sort of videos where I comment on other videos, so I'm probably talking far too much. I don't think we're going to make it through the 9 minutes, but, you know, that gives you something to go away and watch on your own without this person nattering the whole time.
Well, you think, well, why is it that smart people are at the top of dominance hierarchies? And the answer to that, in part, is because they get there first. Right? I mean, everything's a race, roughly speaking, and the faster you are, the more likely you are to be at the forefront of the pack, and intelligence in large part is speed. That's not all of it is. So if you're moving towards something difficult rapidly, the faster people are going to get there first. So IQ of 110 to 115, so that's 75th to 73rd to 85th percentile. Copywriter, accountant, manager, sales manager, analyst, general manager, purchasing agent.
Well, there you are. If you want to be an accountant or an auditor, you have to be, you've heard it from Jordan Peterson, you have to be between 110 and 130. There it is. One thing I would say is that's IQ, meaning like your ability to answer questions within a certain time frame, and it's like IQ is a very specific sort of test. But the bit about conscientiousness and your pain tolerance, I think that's like you want to be accountant, auditor, analyst, but you also have to factor in the kind of company you want to work for, you know. I think that just has just as much of impact, because I think you could succeed with lower IQ doing these sort of roles, but you have to pick and choose the company that's supportive and not one that's in a very, you know, ridiculously competitive environment.
General manager, purchasing agent, registered nurse, sales accountant.
I also watched this video hoping that it wouldn't get to like the lowest rung of IQ, and then it would say like accountant. Because then I would feel like, oh.
Registered nurse, sales account executive. If you look at universities, the smartest people are, they're above this. Who are the smartest people at university? What do you think? Mathematicians. Physicists and mathematicians, right. I could tell you who's on the other end, but I won't. Yeah, I'd like to though. Anyways, okay. Going down now 103 to 108 is slightly above average, right? 60th to 70th percentile. Store manager, bookkeeper, credit clerk, lab tester, general sales, telephone sales, accounting clerk, computer operator, customer service rep, technician, clerk, typist. So you see at this level.
And so it goes. I don't want to make this video too long, so I'm going to cut it there. You get the gist. It goes down, it goes down. You can watch the rest. Now, my overall thoughts about this is it's very difficult to know, particularly if it's like your first job, whether you actually do suit this role. In a weird way, it's like everything else in life where you have to sort of test it out. you have to go and do the roles to realize that you're actually not built for that sort of role. And there's a bit of a process involved with you working out who you are. But I think it's important with this, choosing a role and understanding who you are and what suits you and what sort of work-life balance you want and how long you're prepared to work and how much, pain tolerance you have to certain stress, and if you like working in very competitive, time-pressured environments. These are things that it's good to work out. But once you've worked it out, really understand that that's who you are, because you're going to be successful by benchmarking yourself up against yourself. There's no one going to be able to decide for you what your best role is. I think everyone's in search for, self-help and someone to just tell them what to do. But in reality, no one's going to be able to tell you what's best for you. You have to just work that out yourself. And the importance of understanding it and sticking to that is that when you do understand it, you then can benchmark your own success on how well you're able to keep to that guideline. And you have to just avoid at all costs looking at other people being successful by what they're doing, by their own benchmarks, and not trying to imitate them because you think you can be successful by trying to live your life like you see somebody else doing. Why do I go into all these ramblings about how you define success? Is because when you do, you will then be able to be prepared to go into a job that suits you and be happy that you are getting out of it what you want, without having to look at other people who have other jobs, who work longer hours and maybe are moving up the promotional ladder a little bit faster than you or earning more money than you, and you can be comfortable that that the role that you have is satisfactory because it's giving you what you want from that role, and it's not creating a huge amount of stress, and it's not affecting your personal life. Whereas on the flip side, if you're someone who's prepared to work 70 hours a week, then and if you have a high IQ, go after the most challenging job available to you and work as hard as possible, because that's going to be the thing that gets you there. I thought it was a very interesting video. That's my ramblings on that video. Hopefully you found it interesting, entertaining, and whatnot. I'll see you next time. Don't know when it'll be. Subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.